Hello, my name is Suk-Jung Lee, and I'm the moderator of this session, Breaking Glass Ceiling and Empowering Women. I am one of many who believe the women's economic participation is the key to achieve the gender parity. And I have invited speakers from 3 countries, in Japan, and Taiwan, and Thailand. And I just checked the ILO labor participation rate. In Korea, where I'm coming from, the labor participation rate following the ILO model is 60%, in Thailand 67%, in Japan 73%. Unfortunately, I couldn't find the Taiwan data from the World Bank site. I guess that tells you, maybe because of the tourist industry, the female labor participation in Thailand tends to be higher compared to other ASEAN countries. And Japan has achieved quite high female labor participation rate, because if you look at the European countries, they usually show like in low or mid, even higher 70%. And America, I think, is relatively low with 68% of females aged between 15 and 64. I guess today's session will discuss the women's status, especially in workplace. The many women in these countries have already achieved a lot, and they want to work eagerly. And there is a very strong motivation for younger women to achieve their potential. However, there is still glass ceiling in many Asian countries, and there's no exception for Korean woman or Japanese woman, and also the Taiwan and Thailand women. For this purpose, let me introduce our 3 speakers. The Professor Akio Kobayashi, she is teaching at the Department of Governance Global Studies of Sophia University, and she also was at the Belfer Center of Harvard University, and also he was a former program advisor at the Cabinet Office of Japanese government. So welcome, Ayako. And our second speaker is Professor Wei-Ting Wu of Shijin University of Taiwan. She is teaching social movement, gender politics, and state-to-society relations. Now, third speaker is government officials, Perada Pumesawati, and Dr. Pumesawati is working as at the Division of Gender Equality Promotion at the Department of Women's Affairs and Family Development. So she is actually, practicing the gender parity, gender equality policy, and she was very experienced career, worked in ASEAN working group for the gender issues, and also in the UN Commission on the Status of Women. So it's good to have 3 doctors, 2 academicians, and 1 government officials. So without further ado, let me invite Professor Kobayashi to present the glass ceiling cases of Japan.
Thank you very much. Can I share my screen? PowerPoint, okay. Okay, thank you very much for inviting me for this occasion. I'm Ayako Kobayashi at the Department of Global Studies of University, Tokyo, Japan. And today I'd like to talk a little bit about Japan's case. Japan has a general election in 1 week on October 31st. In terms of gender, people witnessed a lot of challenges in politics from local to national levels recently, and which is quite relevant to women's economic status as well. Let me talk a little bit about it with numbers in politics first. Okay, from gender in politics in Japan, from 5 to 41, 0 to 2, and 18 to question mark. First, in July, Tokyo Metropolitan Assembly election took place and 41 women were elected. As the total seats are 127, now 30% of the chamber is women, which is a dramatic change as only 5 women were elected in the previous election. Also in September, 2 female politicians ran for the leadership of Japan's ruling Liberal Democratic Party for the first time in its 66-year history. Although our new leader, Kishida, is male, there was a clear message that having a gender perspective is a must now. And the new leader, Kishida, promises that he would raise payments for caregivers and child care staff. He also calls for more support for school costs for parents. And on Monday, a news article on general elections reported that there are 18 out of 289 constituencies where a women candidate had never entered the race for a seat at the House of Representatives in Japan, lower house. And reaching to 0 would be ideal. But anyway, I have never seen this kind of a surge of discussion on gender and politics in this country, and I believe we are in an important transition. This might partly be an effect of the Global Gender Gap Report, which ranked Japan number 120 and pointed out one of the challenges for Japan was the small number of female politicians and leaders in Japan. Also, a comment, "Women talk too much," by a former Tokyo Olympic chief, Yoshiro Mori, went viral early this year, which resulted in his resignation. Both men and women expressed that we really need to change the gender discrimination in male-dominated society. And in addition to political and leadership levels, there are so many challenges on the ground. COVID-19 pandemic hit a single parent household seriously. Some NGOs have managed child cafeteria to alleviate child poverty situation for several years, but it became really difficult to open it in the pandemic when people are required to avoid 3 C's, meaning closed spaces, crowded places, and close contact. When people needed separation, how to consolidate bonds, community, and solidarity has been a big challenge for many people. Caregivers, child caring parents are burdened much more than they were in the pre-COVID, while they have to keep earning for their families. And breaking the glass ceiling sometimes sounds like how working women with children can work like men, but what is now required is sharing social responsibility among people. About 7 years ago, British actor Emma Watterson advocated he for she at the United Nations, and she pointed out that men also suffer from the traditional image, like they have to seek promotions, they have to be breadwinners, they have to sacrifice their families for their careers. Also, some scholars in Japan advocate care feminism, which positively interpret care work not as burden or something negative, but as critical and appreciated work for all. And now we need to break the glass from multiple sides, because not only women, but also men, not only working parents, but also people from all walks of life are well aware of the problem of the glass ceiling. And finally, let me a little bit introduce my research. Internationally, women scholars have been strengthening the research on gender and politics and expanding its community. I'm in the field of international relations, especially global governance, and I'm a member of the International Research Project on Women in Leadership in Global Governance, where scholars from different countries present their own projects and try to produce new outcomes together in a couple of years. I myself research on Sadako Ogata, a former United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees, and one of few female leaders at the United Nations in the early 1980s. Using archives Ogata left at the United Nations, I'd like to rediscover her contribution in gender and politics. I appreciate ADRN's approach that tries to expand the horizon and facilitate communications among different experts with different backgrounds. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Kobayashi. When I checked the number of female MPs, Japan is lower, like 9.9% of the total MPs. In case of South Korea, it's more than double, like 19%. However, as you have pointed out, the top political leaders circle, the female politicians in Japan seems to be more active than Korean MPs in that sense, in their own political party and so forth. So maybe I'd like to ask that one later when we enter the discussion. And also because we are supposed to discuss more about the glass ceiling in the corporate sector and even government sector, I wonder how you can compare the public and private sector in terms of breaking a glass ceiling and how this job promotion discrimination has been prevented or has been still maintained in your country. Okay, let me invite our second speaker, the Professor Wei-Ting Wu from Taiwan.
Thank you for the invitation and thanks to our host. Can I share my screen now?
Sure.
Okay. Is it clear?
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, this is Wei-Ting Wu from Taiwan, and I'm the director and the associate professor at Graduate Institute of Gender Studies at Sixing University. So, first of all, let me just quickly show you the Taiwan's rank of GII of UNDP. So Taiwan ranked first in Asia in 2019. And as you can see from the statistics, the achievement is because of the shares of seats in parliament and also the population is with at least some secondary education. These two statistics are quite high in the world. Okay, so I'm going to focus on the gender gaps in the workplace in Taiwan. I want to talk about my conclusion first. The most challenging for the young women in Taiwan will be the maternal war. After reaching a peak among the 25 to 29 age group, women's labor force participation rate in Taiwan decreases with lower participation among women 15 and above than other major countries. What do I mean by maternal war? Pregnant women, working mothers, and even women of childbearing age may face what is referred to as maternal war. Gender stereotypes related to women's role in their family and the needing to take time off after birth and for childcare often place women at a disadvantage in their careers compared to men and the fathers. Here are some significant observations. First, disabled women have the lowest labor force participation rate and the highest unemployment rate out of all groups. The labor force participation rate of women with disability is 14.7%, which is significantly lower than the national average for women. Another observation is that men's labor force participation rate is higher than that of women in all groups. The biggest gap of 25.4 percentage points is among middle-aged and the senior citizens. And this chart talks about who is in charge. As you can see from the statistics, the highest percentage of women in charge of small and medium enterprise is in the service industry. So we come back to the gender gap in labor force participation. In 2019, Taiwan's male labor force participation rate was 67.3%, 0.9 percentage point higher than that of 2009. Taiwan's 2019 female labor force participation rate, on the other hand, was 51.4%, 1.8 percentage point higher than that of 2009. The gender gap in labor force participation is gradually shrinking from 16.8% to in 2009 to 60 percentage point in 2019. And how about the gender pay gap? Taiwan's gender pay gap has declined from 17.9% in 2009 to 14.2% in 2019. In past years, the average gender pay gap in Taiwan has been smaller than in the United States, Japan, and the Republic of Korea. In 2019, the average gender pay gap in Taiwan was 14.2%, which is lower than that of Japan, Republic of Korea, and the United States. So I want to talk about what are factors. The first factor I want to share is education. In Taiwan, the expansion of higher education since the end of the 1990s has accounted for increasing gender equality. However, women's share of educational attainment decreases with the advancement of educational degrees. The high proportions of women appearing in service and sales and assistant jobs shows the concentration of female job opportunities in the lower to middle white-collar jobs despite their collective educational achievements. Women are paid less than men in all occupational categories, especially those in lower white-collar jobs where female laborers are dominant. Intra-occupational wage discrimination indicates the likely existence of unequal pay for equal work between men and women in Taiwan. Why have women earned only 80% of men's wage, while the former's educational achievement and the labor force participation rate has significantly increased? One of the explanations for the persistent gender gap is the concentration of women in low-paid jobs. In 2021, Taiwan's mandatory monthly earnings was about USD $892, but many women are paid not much better than this basic salary. Half of female employees earn less than US $1,095 monthly in 2018, while the median earnings for men was about US $1,307. The second factor I want to talk about is recession. Female workers suffered more than men during the 2008 recession. Both men and women experienced income reduction, but the women's average earning dropped more than men's. Women's job security was also more seriously affected as many private businesses used forced unpaid leave practices. Female employees were more likely to be asked to take temporary leave than their male colleagues. The third factor, also the most important factor right now in Taiwan, is housework. The improvements in aggregate socio-economic statistics for women also tell little about the unequal division of domestic labor between husbands and wives and the continued dominance of patriarchy at home in contemporary Taiwan. Even though women's participation in production has been increasing, they still shoulder a large share of reproduction work than men. Wives with full-time jobs do about 1 hour per day more housework than their partners. Women are responsible for housework such as childcare, laundry, and cooking, which takes time and energy and has to be done almost every day or frequently. So therefore, our government applied a parental leave allowance. Taiwan began incorporating parental leave allowance into social insurance benefit in May 2009. In 2019, there were over 85,000 cases of initially approved subsidies for parental leave without pay, the majority of which, over 69,000 cases, were granted to women. Meanwhile, application for subsidies for parental leave without pay made by men increased from nearly 5,000 applications in 2009 to nearly 16,000 cases in 2019. The proportion of male applicants have grown annually since 2014 from 50.7% in 2015 to 18.6% in 2019. Now I'm going to briefly introduce our Act of Gender Equality in Employment, our government method to empower women. So in Chapter 2, we talk about prohibition of gender discrimination. In Article 7 says, employers should not discriminate against applicants or employees because of their gender or sexual orientation in the course of recruitment, screen test, hiring, placement, assignment, evaluation, and promotion. And from Article 8 to 11, talk about employers should not discriminate against employees because of their gender or sexual orientation in the case of holding or providing education, training, or other related activities, and holding or providing various welfare measures, paying wages, and the retirement, discharge, servants, and the terminations. Chapter 3 is about prevention and the correction of sexual harassment. So Article 13 says employers should prevent and correct sexual harassment. And Section 4 are measures for promotion equality in employment. So Article 14 talk about employees could have 1 day menstrual leave each month. And Article 15 is about maternity leave. Article 16 is about parental leave without pay. Article 17 is about employees can apply for reinstatement after they take the parental leave. Article 18 is about feeding or breast milk collection 16 minutes a day. Article 19 is for the purpose of raising children or less than 3 years age. They can, employees can reduce working hours, work 1 hour per day, or they can reschedule working hours. Article 20 is about family care leaves. Article 23 is about, if employers have 100 employees or more, they need to provide 2 facilities. The first one is breastfeeding rooms. The second one is child care facilities. And Article 24 is about occupational training and the other necessary measures for employees who have left their jobs due to the reason of marriage, pregnancy, childbirth, child care, or taking personal care of their families. Article 25 is about ask government to reward employers who hire the employees who have left their jobs due to the reasons of marriage, pregnancy, childbirth, child care, or taking personal care of their families. So I'm going to stop here, and thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Professor Wu, sharing your very comprehensive PPT. Because there is no Korean panelist, allow me to add some Korean data. Korea has also very good reform for the parental leave. So from next year, if mother or father takes parental leave for the baby under age 1, they can get the 100% of the regular income for the first 3 months and 80% of income for the rest of 9 months, because usually they take 1 year of a parental leave. So I think the legal measure wise, I think it's a very good system. However, many fathers do not want to take parental leave because they are afraid of, being discriminated from the job promotion, because the companies are very competitive place to get promoted. So this is a very discouraging factor for father not taking this generous parental leave. And for the Taiwan case, I think there are many overlaps between Taiwan and South Korea, but there are 2 obvious differences I'd like to ask later. You can answer. If we look at the labor participation rate, Japan and Korea have an M curve, but when I see your slide, in case of Taiwan, there is from the peak, there is a continuous fall. Namely, there is no re-entry to labor market in women in their 40s when they finish this child care that was concentrated in their 30s. So I'm wondering why that kind of re-entry of mother is not happening in Taiwan that much compared to Korea and Japan. And my second question is about the wage differentials. And as you have pointed out, there's a less wage differentials in Taiwan compared to Korea and Japan, because Korean women receive only 70% of male wages, but your case it's much higher. So I'm wondering, because in Korea there is a regular workers and irregular workers. So even though they work full time, there is a status discrimination, quote unquote irregular workers. Women tend to take more irregular workers, even though it's full-time. And of course, for the part-timers, there are more women. So I wonder if that kind of employment status is not same in your country compared to Korea and Japan. Okay, thank you. And let me invite the third speaker, Dr. Phumesawati. So she'll talk about the Thailand case.
Okay, thank you very much, Professor Suk Jung Lee, for your kind introduction. I also appreciate the East Asia Institute and the ADRN for organizing this meeting and giving me an opportunity to learn and exchange with you all today. So please allow me to share my PowerPoint. Can you see the screen clearly? Okay. Okay, my presentations today will cover 2 parts. So the first part that I will provide an overview about the situations of gender inequality in Thailand. And after that, I will highlight ways to break glass ceiling and empowering women, especially in the workplace. Let's start with the first part. Nowadays, when we talk about gender equalities, especially in the workplace, the first reaction that we usually get from public is that women and men now we are equal, and we have plenty of women here in our office. So this is the example that like people always interact when we talk about gender inequality in the workplace. But however, when we look at the statistics, this will give an evidence of gender disparity. In Thailand, the total populations are 66 millions. Where women are more than men, and female populations are approximately 33 millions, while male populations are 32 millions. But when we looking at each dimensions of human development, so the gender gap reveals. In terms of education, even though Thai women have more education. The average number of years of education has increased from 7.6 to 8.6 year, but this number is still less than men at all age group. The overall literacy rate of women also less than men. For men, so 90% of them can read and write, but while only 92% of women are able to literate. In terms of economic participations, though we have more female population, but when we look at the statistics, it shows that 17 million of women participate in the workforce, while 20 million of men join the labor market. So this can be explained that due to women have lower educations, and many of them are unskilled labor, so where they work in informal sector more than men. From the second figure, in the workforce system, women still receive less payment than men in the same job. More men earn more than $300 per month, while women got lower paid at all positions. So regarding the health issue in this area, is quite remarkable improve. The number of maternal mortalities have decreased around 20% per 100,000 birth rate. But however, when we talk about the birth control responsibilities, 70% of women bear this role. In terms of victims of violence against women, approximately 43 persons are subject to violence every day, and 90% of victims of violence are women. Go to the last dimensions is the women's and decision makings. The number of women in decision making is significantly low at all levels. In the cabinet, we have only 4 female minister or white minister. We have only 15% of MP and 10% of senates. So in public sector, only 26 of executive in government agencies are women, despite the fact that women are outnumbered than men, but when it's come to the higher position, few women can make it. At local administrations, we have only 7% of female executives. In business sector, we have 32 female executives in business sectors. So for all 4 dimensions, the dimensions of women in education, in workforce, in health, and in decision makings are used to evaluate the status of gender equalities. So the latest global gender gap report by the World Economic Forum show that Thailand is ranked at the 79th from 158 countries. Due to these limited opportunities, limited supportive environments, this leads to the invisible barrier that prevent women and girls from being promoted to their highest potential. To break glass ceiling in the workplace, 3 key would be considered. The first key is elimination. The second key is support and empowerment. And the last key is mechanism and networking. For the first key, eliminations. So as we all realize that gender inequalities stem from patriarchy and gender stereotype. The first key is to unlock women's potential is eliminating the social norm, as the stereotypes stem from socialization, from social institutions, in families, in school, media, and workplace. Then what we have implemented so far is trying to deconstruct this mindset by focusing on education system. For example, with the support of Ministry of Education's gender stereotype in textbooks were reviewed to produce new textbook to promote women's rights and leadership, as well as instill the principle of gender equalities. At regional level, Thailand is also a lead country in conducting a project on eliminating gender stereotype and discrimination practice against women in education system. This project is lie in the ASEAN's Committee on Women's Work Plans, which we recently published the report on ASEAN's best practices and produced short film and spot on such issue to distribute in ASEAN. So this will help to instill gender equality norms in new generations and public to prepare for visibilities of women and girls in the workplace. So let's move to the second key. So the second key is to support by establishing a supportive environment for women and girls. So this key should be focused on 2 tracks. The first track is to empowering individuals, empowering women and girls to lifelong educations, access to education for all, such as free compulsory educations and other professional and vocational trainings, set up and incubator centers to support women, for example, in MSME business. Or we can establish women club in the workplace to exchange and learn from each other. The most important skill in this era that women are needed to be equipped with is digital literacy. As gender stereotype prevails, this makes girls and women are less visible in STEM, which is needed to be promoted. For building the competitiveness of new generations, goals in ICT events in Thailand has been organized annually, as realizing that young girl needs to be a part of the technology revolutions. So this event provide an opportunity for girls to train and utilize the benefits of ICT in enabling their career and aspirations to generate women visibilities and inclusions in digital world. So the second track of the supportive environments are law and regulations. So as other colleagues mentioned that law and regulations help to provide guidance to agency to go into the right track. For example, in our constitutions, we place a principle of gender equalities in many sections. For example, section 4, women and men are equal, and section 128, we focus that national committee shall compose with the representative of women as well. And then significantly, so this constitution, we have a new advocacy on gender mainstreaming into budget as well. In terms of a specific law, we also have the Gender Equality Act. This is the first legal instrument that define and prohibit gender discriminations, including discrimination in the workplace. This law also moved forward another step that we define the gender discrimination that not only limit only women and men, but we provide protections to persons who have diverse sexual orientation and the gender identity as well. To build a supportive environment, we also need a strong commitment from highest level of the workplace. To support this process, the government, in partnership with all sectors, we have the declarations of intent on the promotions of gender equalities and eliminations of gender discriminations. This one is initiated. The government invites all sectors to sign this declaration. So far we have 126 agencies to be our partner, and then they revise and adjust the working environment to achieve this intent. Also, anti-sexual harassment measure in the workplace has been launched as well, as we all know that sexual harassment is one factor that hinder women's advancements in the workplace. Agencies are obligated to establish their measure and guideline to prevent and tackle this problem. At present, there are 500 agencies that partner with us. As women bear double responsibilities, childcare services, breastfeeding room needs to be put in place for working mom and dad to support them to enter the workforce. In government sector, so a father can take like 15-day parental leave to share childcare responsibility. This leave remain limited, but this is a good start for us. And in some private sector, they also enlarge their parental leave as well. In some private sector, they have one month parental leave with pay as well. In addition, we need to bring voice and visibility of women. Annually, we organize Women Assembly to brainstorm and seek a consultation with women from our walk of life and use their suggestions to formulate policy and activities. Also, inspiring women and girls from role model is another way to break the glass ceiling. Likewise, other countries, we gained an annual award for outstanding women in various occupations. For example, farmers, business women, youth, media. Also, the awards go to agencies that promote women's status on and gender equalities. Let's move to the last key. The last key is mechanism and networking. So my office, which is the Department of Women Affairs and Family Development, we act as a national coordinating mechanisms to protect women's rights and promote gender equalities and empowerment of women through policies, plans, and measures. And we also have a specific divisions of occupational development to build capacities for vulnerable group, for example, single mother, by providing occupation training and boosting up their digital skills to respond to the change of the way of life, especially in the COVID pandemic. We also set up the agency level mechanism since 2001, which is gender focal point in every ministry and department. So the idea of having this mechanism is to integrate a gender perspective into all policy and practice. From 20 years that we have worked on this issue, now we have 138 gender focal point in 19 ministry out of 20 ministry. To conclude, to build up the safe and fair environment for our young generations and women counterparts. So 3 keys or hammers are needed that to be considered to unlock women potential and break glass ceiling, which are eliminations of patriarchy, provisions, a supportive environment for individual and in the workplace, as well as put in place mechanism and network. Thank you.
Thank you very much for Dr. Phumesawati. That's a very comprehensive, very excellent presentation what the Thailand ministry is doing for gender equality. Now, let me ask 3 speakers about this point. In your mind, we have seen 3 countries have a pretty good job in introducing the legal measures and institutional change to eliminate the discrimination against women. However, at the same time, we see the glass ceiling, especially in private sector, in the corporate sector, is still big. You know, when I am hearing the case of Thailand, I was a little bit surprised because she mentioned in the executive level in business sector, woman is taking up 32%. That is higher than the executive level in the central government that was 27%. I think in case of South Korea, it's the opposite. Because of government policy incentives, there is more gender equality in the government public sector. But if you go to the corporate private sector, the high level female managers is very underrepresented in the case of South Korea. So let me ask 3 speakers, in your mind, what is the most strong factor making glass ceiling form in Asia? And what will be the correction measures? Do we have to change our culture, or do we have to change our values, or do we have to redesign the work environment, especially to change the incentive structure to achieve gender equality? Okay, so let me invite Professor Kobayashi first again.
Thank you very much. Those two presentations were really fascinating. I learned a lot. Thank you very much. And yes, on private sector problem, yes, in Japan as well, there are a few leaders, female leaders. And as in the case of South Korea, many women have jobs, but those are irregular jobs. And that is the reason why there is a huge gap, wage gap between men and women, as Professor Wu pointed out. There was a 30.9%, in 2019. So yeah, there is still a huge problem. And I think although at the national level, government tried to create new laws and also amend for example, parental leave law, like in the South Korea, but we still have strong cultures or traditional thinking about men at the private, public space and women at the private space like that. So we really need to change that mind. But gradually, people point out that we need more women at the conferences, other public manifestations, and they need to be represented. Because half of the population are women. It's weird, only men conference is different. Only men panel is strange, and more and more people, especially young women, raise their voice that we need change. So I think we are in a real transition phase, and I hope something positive would follow. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Professor Wu?
Yes, could I answer Professor Lee's first two questions about my my presentation? Okay, so yes, as our host pointed out, the trend of Taiwan female labor force participation declines over years and with different age groups, and the major reason is that it is very difficult for them to come back to the workplace. According to our statistics, after 7 years staying at home and raise their child, female employees will try to return to the workplace, but only 40% of them can come back because our owners or companies think they are eligible, or it's very hard for them to catch up to the new trend, so they refuse to hire these female workers. As for the gender gap, I think Professor Lee, yeah, you are very right to point out the difference. And the data from Taiwan, I'm sorry, the note is too small, so probably you cannot read it. So Taiwan's data includes only industry sector and the service sector. So it's only 2 sectors, and I apologize for it. It's from our government, so they probably have a hard time to collect other data. However, the data from Korea is actually include all employed persons. So I guess here are some here are the reason for the differences. And yeah, and as for the next question, yeah, I agree with our colleague. The culture is a major, it's the main reason. Our patriarchy system and our male dominant or male centered in the workplace all affect the result. And I believe we need gender equality education to to our children. They need to have the gender equality ideas since they are young, and so when they become company owners or when they become the decision makers, they can provide more more balance or more equality for their workers. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Pumesawati?
So thank you. Regarding the number of women in business sector is quite high. Is actually is quite high, higher than the average of the global average. So this is, I think, relate to many factors. So the first factor that because I came across one study that they revealed that there is a high number of female executives in business sector, because this relate to many sector is because of its family business, and then they promote like their daughter or their sister to be as executive. So this is one factor, but also another factor is that so we set up the incubation center for MSME. So this will help to promote female entrepreneur, and then when they register in the stock market, and then it's show that like we have more female executives. And another factor that I think is drive the higher number of the female executives in business sector is the international policy, especially for the transnational agency or transnational business sector. So they nowadays they quite focus on the policy of the inclusions and diversities, and this quite press a lot of they quite press a lot of importance on this issue, and this is why the number of female executive increase. For example, Unilever Thailand, they also have a policy on the 50-50 policy that about quota system in the workplace, and also they promote their female counterpart or female small business that like the procurement. So they also support this kind of business as well. So I think these three factors is make the number of the women in business sector is high. Thank you.
Thank you very much. You know, I think business culture is different depending on the country. Like in South Korea, maybe very likely in Japan, the working hours tends to be longer. So there used to be the COVID-19 reduced it, but still, you know, there is a extra overtime work. So people have to stay longer after 6 p.m. Without going home, and this is very difficult for working mom to stay in workplace. And also the organizational culture in many Korean companies are very collectivistic. So therefore, you know, they tend to emphasize, you know, introducing very standard criteria when they allocate jobs, and also estimate job performance. And this is again not good for females. And I think a more serious weakness of female workers in Korean companies is lack of networking. Usually male workers tend to make networks after business hours, when they go to have dinner together or drinking bar. And there are many informal discussions, informal informations available in that kind of places, but women usually they don't like to go there. So there is definitely the different social capital in workplace, and networking wise, the women's network tend to be less advantageous for the job promotion. So I think this kind of organizational culture and practices are also the factor for the glass ceilings in many Asian countries. I think we have discussed a lot, but if I may I ask you to offer maybe very short sentences to young women who aspire to realize their potential, because there is a huge generational gap in Korea. The older generation still have some patriarchal thinking, but for young women, they are very much liberated from all these reproductive responsibilities, and they want to achieve more in society and in their workplaces. So often they got frustrated when they face this glass ceiling. So I used to say, hanging there, then just endure time, then you will have a chance. But I wish I can advise more than that. So if we want to advise a young, ambitious woman of Asia, what would you say? Professor Kobayashi, you first.
Thank you very much. I'm a university professor, so I work with the young students a lot, and my message would be learn, from others a lot, and we can be a change maker, ourselves. That's my comments. Thanks.
Okay, change maker. The Professor Wu.
Okay, my message probably will be brave, and you will be the first one in your field, and we will all stand by you.
Thank you very much. And Dr. Pumesawati?
For a short message, so I would say that you can do it. So just believe in your potential, and then we stand by you as well. Yeah.
Thank you very much. And actually, in first session of discussion, we had a speaker from India and Mongolia and Indonesia, and we have seen the women's unpaid work and their employment in informal sector were a big factor. So I think in that kind of a setting, the provision of a public service, supplying water, supplying firewood. If the government supply more, I think the females in those developing countries can have a chance to seek a job in open market. And second factor is ideology. They all emphasize very stubborn patriarchal culture in their country. But I'm glad that at least in 3 countries we discussed, and also if I had Korea, Japan, and Thailand, and Taiwan, I think there are more liberal culture and fair culture for women, especially for educated women. So thank you very much. And I'm sure all of you will do your share in supporting and in nurturing the young women to take their own female leadership. Thank you for attending this seminar. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.